Okay, Kansas and Western fans, it's time for episode 9 of the construction of the Kansas and Western Railroad in HO scale. Got a lot to cover, so we'll get started. First of all, as you can probably see, I've cleaned the room up quite a bit. Benchwork construction is getting to the point where things are starting to get in the way, so I just need to maintain a better, more organized, clean area so I have room to work. But that's also a big improvement because it's just easier to get around. All right, starting here on the right, you can see the helix is still slowly growing. I'm getting up to the fourth level, I guess, of subroadbed. Still have about 5 more to go, I believe. You can see now where it's transitioned from the double track subroadbed to single track, since the other track is split off here. No need to have a 8-inch wide piece of plywood anymore, so that's going to save materials, and I'll be able to get more out of one sheet. Moving along, I've painted the base coat for all this track that I've finished laying here in the holly area, and that's just to make sure there's a good dark color on all the ties and all the sides of the rails, both of which will be weathered. But if I miss a weathering or painting just isn't quite complete with a brush, there's a dark color behind it to hide any areas that I might miss. And then in this area, I've been testing some weathering techniques using some grays, a little bit of white. I decided after this I need to add some tan. And all this is done with a toothpick, believe it or not. It would seem like that would take a long time, but it really doesn't, because obviously the ties aren't very big. So one little dab of paint on a toothpick and I can knock out 2 or 3 ties. But the effect that I wanted is what I was able to achieve, which is I didn't like the look of just solidly painting all the ties gray, because then you're just changing one solid color for another. And what the toothpick does, and I think you can see in the video, is it allows some of the wood grain that's imprinted into the plastic to show through, which is prototypical. When ties start to get weathered by the sun, they don't just all turn white, they just start to bleach. And I know part of that's from dust and dirt travel that's brought by trains or wind or whatever. So I wanted that non-uniform look, and I think I was able to achieve that. So this little section here with experimentation with different paints and whatnot took about 30 minutes, which seems like a long time. But again, I was trying to figure out what colors to use and technique, but I think I could probably knock all the holly out in a day. So that's not too bad, but we'll see how it goes. Otherwise, as I said, I've got all the holly trackage in. It's all been wired, soldered, tested. If you saw my operations video on Monday, that kind of bore that out. Everything works really well. It seems like a lot of track for a small space, but even though Holly's a small town, it does have 4 tracks that service it. I'm not trying to stick completely to prototype, but it gives me an excuse to have more track, because since this area is so short, I really had to kind of finagle all these crossovers so that a train that came in with several cars could figure out what to do with them in order to get a few cars set out for the grain elevator. And so after lots of testing in my mind, operationally, of how this would work, this is what I came up with for track. This section here curves out because it allows me to store 3 cars there without obstructing this crossover, so another train can come in and bring cars in. The elevator haven't got much work done on other than a solid paint job for the whole thing, so obviously still have to add more windows and details and such, and start to kit bash it further with all the elements that you see here in this photo is what I'm trying to recreate to some degree anyway. Moving on, got my first piece of fascia up. It's semi-temporary. I did cut it to width in order to cover the foam edge and the benchwork edge, but I really just wanted to get this switch mounted for the Coca Junction motor that you see under there. I still haven't gotten it wired that up yet, but I just wanted to see if I could get that mounted so that I could get that switch working again. The only thing I might go back and change is these hard 90-degree corners. I might blend those into more of a bevel or something, just so they don't catch on clothing or something like that, but we'll see how that goes. Moving around, you can see I've got all the bench work and foam in for Lamar. So now will be the fun aspect of trying to squeeze three industries and a train station into a 1 foot wide area. I'm going to try to limit myself to just 3 tracks, 4 at the max, with 4 being stub end sidings to serve the industries. But this will be something I've never done before, where I try to squeeze industries into a narrow area and convert some kits into background kits, so that you'll just see the fronts, as model railroaders know what that is. But that'll be a challenge to figure out how I'm going to arrange all that. It's basically based on, if you look on Google Earth, Lamar, Colorado, you take Highway 50 through town, and then you have to cut right through downtown and turn north to get out of town, and then it turns back west again. But right where you turn north is where that train station is located, and it stands out like a sore thumb because there's a giant wind turbine blade laying there on the ground in the little park they have, plus an old steam Santa Fe locomotive in the area. So everything from there back to the east is what I'm trying to model. There's a grain elevator, a feed mill, some kind of a grain distribution warehouse, I'm not sure what that is, and that train station. So moving around, I've stopped with the bench work here for a couple reasons. The main one is, here's the part where I have to make sure everything works before I build any more bench work. I've run the cable for all these switch machines so they can come back to my first control panel here. And as you can see, I've got all the toggles mounted. And the way this is going to work in theory, because again, it hasn't been wired or tested, is all the switches you see on the actual lines, and the lines represent the tracks, those are the power block switches. So when I have a train on there and I want to kill power to it, I just turn that switch off, and that'll help preserve power for the rest of the system and shut off the train's engines, because if I'm not, or the sounds, so since I'm not running it, I don't need to hear it anymore. And then the switch located between the tracks is the turnout controls for either end. And I believe this should work. I haven't tested it yet, but one switch should control both turnouts for each end. And the theory is, between the tracks, and it'll be kind of a pattern situation, if you want to bring a train in on this line, then you'll need to have the switch, there's down, there's up, and the up indication would indicate that the turnout for this end and the other end has been thrown so that a train will go on this track. So up to that track, down for that track. Obviously, if you're going to several different tracks, there's going to be kind of a pattern involved, and I might create a diagram to post, or I might just learn it. We'll see how it goes. But that's how it works in theory. I'm hoping to have all this done by my next update video. And this is what my next operations video is going to be, is testing these out and then running a locomotive back and forth through all the turnouts up and down each track to show that it actually does work in practice. We'll see. Or it'll be embarrassing. We'll see. Anyway, so I can't put any more plywood on until I make sure all this works, just because it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to troubleshoot when I can just look straight down versus climbing underneath. But moving on, got all the base bench work down to start the peninsula. And I've got my location chosen for my central power station, I guess I can call it. There's my ProCab. It'll basically be stationary because I'll be mounting UTP panels, which is basically a panel that you can plug in walk-around throttles to, and they'll go all the way around here and then all the way around the rest of the room. Since this is basically the new version of that's the DCC version, so everything is basically, I'm not even going to try to explain it. You guys can look that up. But anyway, this can't be unplugged. So I can't, while I'm running trains, it has to stay plugged in. So it's going to stay put. And then the other cabs, which once I get them plugged in, I'll show how those work too for the non-railroad people out there. But since that has to stay put, this is my central location. This power pack here is going to be controlling my turnouts and accessories. So it's kind of hidden. It doesn't need to be seen. It's basically an on-off situation. I can still reach it if I need to reach under to adjust something or turn that off, so it's not difficult, but it doesn't need to be out in the open, so that's why it's mounted like that. Still have to run the bus for that to feed power to the turnouts over there, and the turnouts on this track, as well as Coca Junction, which is what I've come to start calling that, which is short for Colorado, Kansas. Hoping to have all that done by the next video too. So lots of wiring. May not look like a big change next time, but electrically it's important to get done. And then just for a further walk around, I've got my stations kind of slightly organized, but more just cleaned up, and they're taking up position where the peninsula will be. And then not much going on here because I'm kind of working in a linear fashion at this point. But I do have my trains moved out of the way for obvious reasons until we get that done, and then they'll all get parked underneath where they're out of the way and out of harm's reach, I guess. I haven't worked on this helix at all because, as you can see, this is my cutting station area, and especially when I'm cutting sub-roadbed pieces for that, a whole 4x8 sheet laying on its face takes up a lot of room, and you have to work around both sides of it. So when that thing is slid out against or away from the wall so I can do that, it just takes up a lot of space. So this helix is going to be waiting for a bit. I'm going to build this one up to the top level and start all my upper level bench work all the way around. And I think I'll stop in this nook area and then work on that helix, just so I can make sure I get the heights right for the upper level, because I'm going to be building legs like there to support the upper level, even though the helix is only going to the middle level. But anyway, gotten a lot done. Happy again with the progress. Appreciate everybody's comments and questions. Keep them coming. I like to discuss this and help others figure out their own problems. And the discussion also creates thoughts for me and things I might be leaving out. So keep them coming. I appreciate all the subs, and I try to do the same. I guess that's it for now. Thanks for watching.